Hello YouTube. This video is a follow-up to a video I made way back in October of 2015 entitled Why I Am Not an Atheist. First off, I can't believe I've been making videos for so long. And second, for those of you who complain about my audio quality now, check out how bad it was back then. At the time I made that video, I got a lot of negative feedback, and not actually about the audio quality, surprisingly. And the negative feedback was understandable because I displayed some pretty major ignorance, not the least of which was that I should have titled my video Why I Don't Call Myself an Atheist, which is what I've decided to call this one. Anyway, I decided way back then to make a follow-up video, and I actually wrote a script for one, but never got around to recording it because I didn't feel quite comfortable enough with my views on the subject. Now, with about a year and a half to think about it, I finally feel ready to tackle the subject again. For the record, based on my beliefs, I am technically an agnostic atheist. But I'm not going to just leave it at this. I still want to make it clear why I choose not to use the label atheist, no matter how technically accurate it may be. But before I do, I want to explain my problem with the term atheist itself. The term describes a person's beliefs with regards to the existence of God. Essentially, anyone who does not have an active belief in God is an atheist. Someone commented on my previous video with the following analogy. If he came up to me and asked me if I believe he has a turnip in his pocket, what would my answer be? If I answer yes, I'm the equivalent of a theist in that I believe there is a turnip in his pocket. And if I answer anything other than yes, I am the equivalent of an atheist in that I do not believe there is a turnip in his pocket. The problem I have with this scenario is that there is absolutely no distinction made between people who are certain there is no turnip in his pocket and people who have absolutely no idea or simply aren't willing to commit to saying, yes, there is a turnip. Personally, if someone asked me such a question, I would refuse to answer because I simply do not have enough information to make an informed decision. That's how I feel about atheism. I have no idea if there is some kind of deity. I have too many doubts to actually believe in one, but I am nowhere near certain that none exists. Yet, many atheists, under the label of atheism, display an absolute or near certainty that there are no deities. And for some reason, because I am technically an atheist, I am in the same category as such people. Now, I understand there are distinctions between different types of atheists depending on the certainty. But personally, I think that the two stances of there is no God and I have no idea if there's a God deserve completely different labels because they represent significantly different systems of belief. This is why in casual conversation, I will still continue to refer myself as an quote-unquote agnostic, despite that not technically being a correct term. I feel like it's the closest thing we have to a term that matches my beliefs that doesn't require a lot of complex explanation. Now, continuing on with why I reject the label of atheist, I am going to use an analogy. Let's say you call yourself a humanist because your beliefs fit the definition perfectly. But then a group of people start using the name humanist as a label, and while they claim to have the same beliefs as you, they spend almost all their time fighting against both feminists and men's rights activists. After a while, they become the most well-known humanists out there to the point where people automatically associate humanism with being both anti-feminist and anti-men's rights. So from now on, anytime you tell someone you're a humanist, they make those same associations about you and assume that you too are anti-feminist and anti-men's rights. And you can argue till you're blue in the face that the definition of humanism has nothing to do with that, it's just a description of a certain set of beliefs. But people will continue to make those assumptions about you. And that's completely outside your control. That's how I feel about the term atheism. A word that should be purely descriptive has been taken by people as a label for their anti-theistic activities and movements. Atheism has a logo, has meetings, has unofficial leaders, and influential figures. I hear it frequently and casually referred to as a movement or a community by people here on YouTube and elsewhere. These are not the characteristics of a purely descriptive label. Now, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with forming a community around a descriptive label. You could, for example, form a community of people who suffer from migraines. You could swap stories and home remedies and talk about issues common to migraine sufferers. That's fine. But the moment you start taking action as a member of that community, what you've done is to make that label more than just descriptive. If you, as a group of migraine sufferers, started campaigning against pharmaceutical companies, and you did so under the label of quote-unquote migraine sufferers, then you're potentially adding to the definition of that term. From now on, migraine sufferers refers not only to people who suffer from migraines, but also to people who are opposed to pharmaceutical companies. Likewise, atheism has had other definitions placed upon it by people who have acted under that label. I don't even know all the different things that have been attached to it, but anti-theism and anti-religion have definitely been things I personally have noticed. So if I call myself an atheist, people are likely to assume that I too am opposed to theism and to religion. I'd also be automatically assumed to be a member of the atheist community, and that comes with all the costs and benefits of being a member of a community, including both mutual support and guilt by association. First off, what this means is that if you try to use the argument that atheism has a clear definition and only one definition, and that is a lack of belief in a deity, I think you're wrong. Because now that people have organized using that word, it has more than one definition now. In the dictionary now, atheism should say, definition number 1 is someone with a lack of belief in God, or whatever technical way you want to write that. And then definition 2, a member of the atheist community who may believe in anti-theism or anti-religion or skepticism or whatever else is currently attached to atheism as a word. And going back to the assumptions people will make, you might say that anyone who makes those assumptions about me based on a label would be wrong to do so, and I shouldn't care what such people think. In a general sense, I don't care if people don't like me, but I prefer if they don't like me for accurate reasons. I have plenty of criticisms of organized religion. My last video is an example of that, but I'm not opposed to all theism, and I'm not opposed to all aspects of religion. And I don't think it's helpful to take on a label that causes people to assume I believe things that I don't. At this point, the more cynical among you may be thinking, if you don't like the label, just don't use it. And if that's all this was about, I wouldn't even be making this video. But the thing is, I'd like to be able to use the label. And if the word atheist ever goes back to meaning simply a lack of belief in God, then I'd be more inclined to use it. Also, I'll wager I'm not the only person who feels this way about the label. There are plenty of people who are technically atheists who don't want to use the word atheist to describe themselves, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of the reasons is they don't want to be associated with all the baggage the word has accumulated. I also wouldn't be surprised if another reason was that people felt deep down that do you believe in a deity is the wrong question to use to label people's religious beliefs. So I'd like to present solutions to these issues. My first potential solution is to encourage people to identify with the most relevant and accurate label to represent their religious beliefs. This means that for many atheists, it would be more relevant, useful, and accurate to identify rather as an anti-theist. That's a label that encompasses both a lack of belief in a deity and an opposition to religion, which is how most people in the atheist community seem to use the word atheist anyway. Also, since anti-theist is not purely descriptive, the manner of the opposition to theism is not part of the definition, it's a much better term to use as a label to take action under. The second solution I would propose is to change the question we use to label people's religious beliefs. Rather than asking, do you believe in a deity, we should be asking, is there a deity? We can then have 3 distinct groups of people. Those who answer yes, those who answer no, and everyone in between. We can then have subgroups of each of the three groups based on any number of different factors. I think this system would result in a much better reflection of people's actual beliefs, and any labels that would result would do a better job of doing what labels of that sort are ideally meant for, which is grouping like-minded people together. So, in the end, yes, I'm technically an atheist, but don't expect me to go around calling me that or grouping myself with those of you who do. And if you want to label me, you can call me Positive Improvement. And I wish you all the best.